The name Weald is an ancient one, and it means trees, and that's something this area of southern England has in abundance. But it's strange to think that this was once an industrial landscape. Today it has forest, shady streams, heathland and rich pasture. It's an incredible tapestry of habitats filled with wildlife. In this series, I'm visiting some of Britain's most outstanding areas of natural beauty to explore the fascinating wildlife that has made these places their home. This time, I'm in an area known as the Weald in southeast England. It's a glorious view, isn't it? It's an archetypical view of southern England, what tourists hope to find when they come here. And at first glance it looks like a patchwork of fields and hedgerows, but actually it's a little different here. What you've really got is an ancient wood with holes, the fields, cut into it. That means that all these strips are miniature forests, a fascinating and secret environment well worth exploring. While I'm here, I hope to observe herds of fallow deer with new fawns, catch a glimpse of our beautiful dragonflies, and meet a junior wildlife ranger with a glowing passion for a snail-eating beetle.
What we've got here is something that's definitely worth protecting.
The Weald stretches from the east coast of Kent right across into West Sussex, but I'm going to be largely exploring the area known as the High Weald, a tapestry of habitats on sandstone and clay, right in the heart of the Weald. The word Weald means woodland in Old English. If there's one tree that to me really symbolises the Weald, it has to be this one, the hornbeam. Hundreds of years ago, somebody, a woodsman, cut this tree when it was a sapling almost all the way through and bent it down and laid a hedge which has long since disappeared, and all we're left with now is this wonderful tree. It's got a really gnarly look to it, kind of like the knobbly knees of an old man. And hornbeam has another name, hardbeam, which gives you something of its nature because the wood of this tree is really tough. It blunts tools, even chainsaws, really quickly. But the main use for hornbeam was to produce charcoal, because this tree produces charcoal that gives very, very high output of temperature, and that's what was needed to work iron. For hundreds of years, this provided the energy that made the tools and the weapons that defined our nation through a turbulent millennium of history. This was the secret of the Weald. That is ironstone, and from the earliest days of the iron industry to the end of the 18th century, that was the dominant force in this area. People making metal from that humble-looking rock. Dr. Nicola Bannister has been studying the ways our ancestors used the land in times gone by. Nicola, this is an area that I've known for many years, and when I look out across it I see the trees and the plants and I know their uses. But your specialism is as a landscape archaeologist. What do you see when you look across this landscape?
I see a landscape that's been heavily exploited by humans over thousands of years.
I mean, my understanding is that during the iron production phase, which was a long period of our history,
yeah,
this was hive of industry, which is hard to picture today.
It is, it is. I mean, iron was exploited from the Iron Age right the way through into the 17th, 18th century. And all these valleys would have had their forges and their furnaces, you know, making metalwork for export right across the world.
It's an interesting thing because every village in this area still has a forge.
Yeah.
And I guess the arrowheads that were fired at Agincourt, to the cannons and the cannonballs that built our empire during the Age of Enlightenment, they were produced here.
That's right, that's right. It's amazing to think the noise and the smoke and the sound of people working in the woods and working in the forges in such a peaceful setting.
Everywhere I look, there are indicators of ancient woodland, like this pendulous sedge here. The real lover of moist shade, and of course moisture is one of the magic things about forests. Forests lock water into the landscape. The roots of the trees hold it in the land. It's wonderful. And wherever you get water, you get life. So although at first glance it seems a dark place, actually there's a lot to be found here. One of the things the Weald is particularly good for are reptiles. In areas like this we get a lot of bracken that are perfect, and you can see here there are a couple of bits. There's a bit of tin and this mat. These have been put down to help conservationists survey the reptiles in the area, because these warm up well in the mornings, just like now. It's perfect timing, and reptiles enjoy that warmth. It gets them going in the morning. Have a look and see what's under here. Oh, look at this beautiful slow worm and the babies. Absolutely wonderful. This coppery metallic body. I'm not going to handle it because slow worms are of course related to lizards, and one of the defense mechanisms they have for predation is that they can shed their tail. It's a bit of a shock for the predator, but even the predator goes away with a bit of a meal. But it's not good for the slow worm because it's very stressful. And it's quite a significant loss of body mass, and as the year's maturing, it's much better to leave them alone and not cause that to happen. In Britain, all reptiles are protected by law, which is a great thing, because in the past, people would see something in the corner of their eye slithering, would assume it was venomous. Very often, innocent creatures were impaled on forks and shovels. Hopefully, we're a little bit more enlightened today. Let's have a look under the wrinkly tin. Oh, look at the grass snakes. Beautiful grass snakes. Of course, completely harmless to us. They're not in any way venomous. If you do pick one up, they will give off this horrible, slimy, smelly substance. And they also have this habit of playing dead. They'll turn their head over and stick their tongue out, go, and try to convince you that they're dead. And if you wait very patiently and watch them, eventually the eye will just go. And if it senses you again, straight back into this torpid state. Quite wonderful. And there's a shed skin here as well. That's a lovely sight. It's one of my favourite creatures, the grass snake. Oh, and there's a snake you don't want to pick up. There's an adder on top of the tin there now. We've got this beautiful black diamond pattern on the back. Oh, it's moving now. These snakes, although they're small, they can deliver a serious bite. They're not something we should fear, because as you see, their immediate reaction is to run away. But it's certainly not something you should ever play with. Don't go and try and pick one up, because their strike is incredibly fast.
The jewel in the High Weald's crown is undoubtedly the ancient Ashdown Forest. At Doomsday in 1086, it was the most densely wooded area in all of England, and today it is the best surviving example of 4 medieval forests that existed on this high sandstone ridge.
It's a magnificent tree. It's a yew tree, of course, and it's very, very ancient. You can't easily date yew trees because it's impossible to take a conventional core sample to count the rings because of the strange spreading way in which they grow. We know this tree is at least 500 years old. It's probably a lot older than that. They are one of the longest living plants found in Europe, and it's difficult to say exactly how long yew trees can live because they normally suffer from interference by humans. But it's believed that they have the potential to live for up to 9,000 years. I like to sit under old trees like this and to contemplate. They're a great place for your mind. They're peaceful places. And it brings back the words of a great conservationist, Weald, who said, "Remember, we belong to nature, not it to us."
The forest was enclosed as a royal hunting park in the 13th century. Native red deer were eventually hunted out, but the introduced fallow deer have endured.
There's some deer out here now.
The enclosing fence is long gone, and today herds of fallow deer roam freely. Late afternoon is the best time to see them grazing on the edges of woodland.
Most of those fallow deer are common fallow. They have spots, but they're not particularly well defined. And around the white patch of their tail is a black horseshoe shape. Then we've got some dark fallow. The melanistic fallow, they'll be dark all year, all through the winter. And the common fallow will have a grey coat in the winter. But in amongst them, there's a menil, and the menil have very, very bright spots. And they will keep their spots, even in the winter, very bright and beautiful.
Single fawns are born in June and early July. Their mothers will leave them hidden for the first month, returning only to feed them until they are big enough to follow the herd. Does communicate with their young using squeaks and bleats, and keep a constant lookout for potential danger.
They tend not to hesitate if there's something that really catches their attention. They will run first and look last. They don't hang around. I admire them for that.
The Weald holds many wildlife secrets, and there's one I'll have to wait until after dark to see. Trees and woodland cover a third of the area known as the High Weald in southeast England.
One of the reasons the Weald is so good for seeing wildlife is you have plenty of cover in the woodland, but also you've got lots of open areas with edge, and it's on those edgy areas that you have the best chance of seeing mammals like deer or foxes.
With patience and luck, it's possible to witness the harsh reality of a predator hunting its prey. The Ashdown Forest isn't just woodland. 2/3 is actually lowland heath. This is Old Lodge Reserve, managed by the Sussex Wildlife Trust, where I'm joining Ranger Alice Parfitt.
So, tell me about managing an area like this, because we've got all this wonderful heathland here, but you only have to glance at it and you can spot innumerable small trees coming up. doesn't it want to really be woodland?
Yes, a lot of it would want to revert back to woodland. Sort of one of the things that we have to do, keep that scrub at bay.
And what's the advantage of doing that?
Well, the heathlands obviously evolved over many thousands of years, so what we've got is a lot of species that become dependent on the heathland. So things like woodlark, stone chats, insects use it, there's lots of dragonflies that are unique to heathlands as well.
34 species of butterfly have been recorded here, and this reserve is also a special protected area for birds such as breeding stone chats.
Oh, look at that, there's an egg up there. Yeah, I think it's a golf ball.
I think you're right.
I wonder how on earth that got to be there. It's either a really bad golfer, or maybe a bird's taken it out. I don't know, maybe a corvid or
Or a buzzard,
yeah.
something like that maybe.
It looks like it's been wedged into a split. Maybe something tried to break it open. It's the strangest sight. You sometimes find golf balls that foxes have cached, but I don't know how. I've never seen that.
I've never seen one in a tree before like that.
Bit hard on the golfer though, isn't it? We'll play around that one.
Pine trees also harbour insects for a goldcrest, our smallest breeding bird. Ponds are a typical feature of the Weald. Remnants of the iron industry, many have long since dried up, but others have been added to encourage wildlife. Over half of Britain's breeding species of damsel and dragonfly have been recorded here, including the very rare small red damselfly.
One of the real joys of walking through Weald and woodland is that you never know quite what you're going to bump into next. These dramatic features are Eridge rocks. This is all sandstone that was laid down in the bottoms of rivers millions of years ago. And then by tectonic action, it was pushed up at about the same time the Alps were being created, and the surrounding soil has washed away. They're fantastic, evocative places to explore. Come and have a look at this. This is one of our rarest ferns. And you can see it here growing, it looks just like a moss. It gets its name from this area. It's called the Tunbridge filmy fern. And you can see why it's called filmy. It's so translucent. In fact, it grows just 1 cell thick, which makes it very vulnerable to drying out or being dislodged from the rocks by some careless hand. It's a real wonder. The other parts of Britain you find it are places much damper, like the west coast of Scotland or in Ireland. But here in this unique place, you get these special conditions, Weald and damp, rocky conditions that are also just perfect. There are quite a lot of features like this throughout the Weald, and not surprisingly we know that people lived beside them way back in the days of hunting and gathering, when Britain was a wild, less populated island. These would have been fixed points in the landscape that people navigated by, and perhaps tribes or families were associated to each of these rocks. Stone tools have been found at nearly all of the rocks in the Weald. It's fascinating to think, and it reminds me instantly of sacred sites that I've been shown by Aboriginals in Australia, places of great significance where ceremonies are still conducted and where there is great reverence accorded to nature.
Warm, dry nights in June and July are ideal for seeing an old schoolboy favourite, the glowworm. So who better to help me find them than 15-year-old junior wildlife ranger Jack Clark.
Well, Jack, you're a keen local naturalist, and you've brought me out here because this is your hotspot, isn't it, for glowworms?
Yeah.
How did you become interested in nature?
Well, since I was young, I've been interested in pond life, and I started to pond it when I was younger with friends and family, and I really wanted to learn more about them in depth.
And what are you doing to further your knowledge these days?
I go out with a charity, a conservation charity, and do surveys, and you know, you'll be working and you'll find something and you'll study it. You sort of get a bit confused by what it is, and you have the odd argument about what it is, and you'll sort of go home and research it, and it's some things you find really interesting.
Well, shall we go and see if we can find some glowworms?
Yeah, definitely, sounds good.
Okay, let's do it. Here we go then. Look at that. Amazing. So come on, tell me what you know about glowworms.
Well, the female creates the green light by using a chemical reaction in her body to attract a male to mate with her, and she will then go and lay the eggs shortly after they've mated, and the eggs will hatch, and they are in their larval form for 2 years.
Yeah. And what do they eat?
Well, they eat the snails, small snails, and slugs. And when they actually go to eat them, they bite them, and they inject toxin that turns their body to a liquid, and they drink it.
And
a bit like
I mean,
a spider.
the size difference between the larvae of one of these and a snail is a bit like you trying to eat an elephant.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they climb onto the back of the snail shell actually and use their weight to topple them over. Once doing so, obviously the snail struggles to get to the floor before the glowworm bites it, and obviously it's too late for the snail, but a meal for the glowworm.
Well, I am really impressed with your knowledge on glowworms and your enthusiasm for nature. I think it's fantastic.
We head back to the street next, and Carl's sniffing around Gloria again. Really? You think she'd have learnt her lesson there. Then she's graced our telly for nearly 3 decades. Our very own Lorraine Kelly talks to Piers Morgan. Life Stories later at 9.